So tonight I have the incredible honor to present the first ever Newmark Innovation Award to John Borthwick. Woo! Innovation, in my opinion, is a vastly overused word. For instance, when you Google the word innovation, you'll get more than 2 trillion responses. Corporate America loves innovation, and many big companies, like mine, now have chief innovation officers. The startup community is equally enthusiastic. Innovation is a buzzword for any entrepreneur trying to make a big breakthrough. And for marketers like me, it punctuates every conversation we have. So what does true innovation look like? Perhaps I can offer a few descriptors. It is someone who is deeply curious. It's a person who identifies what's around the corner when the rest of us are still 10 blocks behind. It's someone who acts and demonstrates the new when others are content just to read and talk about change. And it is, most definitely, John Borthwick. So let's start with what John has done. We'll call this kind of his opening credits. John has been a leader and an early investor on the New York tech scene for 2 decades. His first company, WP Studio, was acquired by AOL, which John then joined to lead their new product development studio. With the AOL-Time Warner merger, John moved to Time Warner as Senior Vice President of Alliances and Tech Strategy, driving technology and partnering with companies like Microsoft, Google, Sony, and Intel. John then pivoted back to the startup world as CEO of Photolog, the first and largest social photo sharing site. This was pre-Flickr, pre-Instagram. In less than a year, John turned the company cash flow positive and went on to sell the business for nearly $100 million. In 2007, John founded BetaWorks, the startup platform that builds and invests in companies across the social media internet. BetaWorks, for those of you who don't know, has such an interesting model. No surprise, given who their CEO is. BetaWorks builds companies like Giphy, Dots, Bitly, Chartbeat. They also have an investment fund for early stage startups. And some of their investments, just to rattle off a few, Tumblr, Kickstarter, Medium, and Gimlet, which, by the way, just had a very nice exit to Spotify. BetaWorks also created Camps, a thematic accelerator program for startups in frontier technology, such as bots, AI, and verbal computing. And just this past spring, BetaWorks opened its doors to their newest company, Studios, combining, yeah, go Studios, love Studios. Combining physical space with software, BetaWorks Studios is a club for builders, giving the tech industry a common space for community and connection. Any one of these ideas would be highly original, but taken together, John has developed a space that spawns extraordinary companies working with exceptional people to combine art, science, and community. Oh, and by the way, he holds an MBA from Wharton, an undergraduate degree in economics from Wesleyan, and sits on the boards of multiple companies, including WNYC, New York Public Radio, Data and Society, Giphy, Dots, and Blade. Short little list. Interestingly, John seems to have been born an innovator, coming from a bloodline of entrepreneurs on both sides of his family. His father, I don't know if he's going to talk about this, so I need to tell you. His father's line invented meat freezing for transportation. His mother's grandmother had a nose for transforming the French perfume industry. And while all of this paints a picture of a person who has driven innovation through his business success, I'd like to just take a moment and share a more personal picture of how John's friends and colleagues experience his innovative mind and approach. First, from a financial analyst who covers the media and tech space. John is genuinely one of the most curious people I know. He had a 3D printer before anyone. He was the first to talk about chatbots, podcasting, GIFs, and live video streaming. He always seems to be ahead of the curve, technologically speaking. Second, from a longtime employee of BetaWorks, John, if you don't know who these people are, I can give you the clues later on. Longtime employee of BetaWorks. John read every single Shakespeare play in the order they were written last year. I can't remember why he was reading them, but I remember thinking at the time that it was a typical, quote, John thing to do. When everyone is talking about tech and AI, he goes back and reads plays from the 16th century. From a top marketer and a friend. Whenever I need help from John, he physically shows up. Very few busy leaders do that in today's world, and his help and advice to me is more valuable than he knows. I admire his opinions, obsessions, and have learned so much from John. He's a true expert on the future of media, plus I respect a true podcast nerd, as do we all, of course. From a fellow investor, John lives in the future. He's always way ahead of huge trends on a bizarrely consistent basis. And he has really strong conviction for what he thinks will be important and leans in hard. I'm not sure how John creates the space to be so thoughtful about the future while operating in the present, but he is uniquely good at this. From a board member and a friend, love this one, John pulled a coaxial cable out of his pocket on his first official date with his wife Blair, who's here tonight, in 1993, explaining that our world's connective tissue would never be the same. So sweet. So sweet. In the mid-90s, John wrote a paper on cloud computing before anyone talked about clouds other than the ones that produced rain. John sees futures and patterns. He sees where it's going, where it should go for the betterment of future generations. And finally, John from me. I met John about 8 years ago. I was new to my role in GE, and I had the bright idea of pulling together a group of interesting thinkers to have dinner with our chairman and offer some fresh perspectives. Someone tipped me off about this guy named John Borthwick. I sat him at the head of the table, opposite our CEO, and I've never looked back. Since then, I've had the good fortune to partner with John through Giphy and DOTS, to have my team attend his camps, and to seek out his incredibly wise advice many times over. I always walk away after a conversation with John smarter, better informed, and with a fresh perspective. And so it gives me great pleasure tonight to introduce a true innovator and present the 2019 Newmark Innovation Award to my friend John Borthwick.